So we are rearranging our agenda a little bit since our security situation is different than anticipated today. So I want to welcome Mary Josephs and to the stage, as well as Leslie Cass, CEO of Lewis Tree Services, and Dion Houchins, CEO and Chairman of Houchins Industries. Really delighted that you all can join us today. Thank you so much for being here. And also just want to mention that Mary Josephs, in addition to being founder and CEO of Verret Advisors, is a contributor to Forbes magazine, had a lovely piece today. So thank you all for being with us. And Mary, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. That was great. Ownership advantage. Maureen said the power of employee ownership playing out again and again and again. And this morning, we have the pleasure to hear what that means, to hear two amazing CEOs, Dion and Leslie, talk about their experience with some legacy successful employee-owned companies. And I'm really excited for you to hear the story and elaborate on what we've already heard: good jobs, financial security, high engagement with employees. So let's get started. Getting to know Houchins Industries and Lewis Tree Services. I will turn it over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Maureen. So Lewis Tree Service has been around for almost, 96 years, or 86 years, sorry. So we've been around a very long time. Fortunately, we turned ESOP 26 years ago, and that's when the company really took off from more of a regional service to today we're in 27 states with 4,000 people. The work that we do is utility line clearance, or vegetation management, which sounds very fancy. It's the people that keep the trees out of the power lines. And when you visualize that work, it's typically groups of 2 or more craft workers out with a bucket truck. Sometimes in the bucket, one person's the trimmer. They trim the trees, they're in the bucket, or sometimes they climb. And imagine, you can't just let the limb fall. The work's actually very complex. You have to manage where that piece comes down. Then you have the grounds person, sometimes called the branch manager, if you want to make it sound fun. But they are in charge of spotting while the person's cutting to make sure no one gets in trouble, keeping that person safe next to live power lines, mind you. And then also chipping the brush, like coordinating that. And that work is in the elements, frequently by traffic, with some feisty homeowners who are not always happy to see you there, even though the utilities, pay you to be there and it's required by law. Animals, you name it, it's an exciting and tough job. And for those folks to be craft workers that have a retirement and a future is game-changing to their families. The nice part is the profits of the company go back to the communities in the 27 states. You can imagine these are communities where they live, paycheck to paycheck typically. They don't always even feel, we have a 401k match, they don't always even feel that they can afford to take advantage of that 401k match. We enroll them and they have to unenroll to try to encourage them on that path. But it can be financially challenging, and being in an employee-owned company gives them that security. And I'll just give you one quick example of the kind of things we can do as an employee-owned company. When the gas prices were really, really high when I started with the company in 2022, our employees were struggling to get to work, like to afford to get to work. So we said, well, the management team before me said, hey, we're going to give a stipend, $25 a week, to all of our hourly craft workers until this price comes down, because it's their money. They need it now. If you can't get to work, you can't retire. So that's just one example of how employee ownership has really empowered our folks at Lewis Tree.
That's awesome. Dion?
First off, I am no relation, believe it or not, to the company. My name's spelled with an I, and the company has an E. And number two, I didn't realize I had an accent till I got here. So, we were founded in 1897, one single grocery store in Glasgow, Kentucky. So we're a 108-year-old company headquartered now in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We've been in ESOP since 1988, one of the early adopters. And we got 19,000 ESOP participants. over 16,000 employees in 22 states. Our revenue for fiscal year 2024 was over $4 billion. The fair market value of our equity is over $2 billion. So we're not your typical ESOP, obviously. Since 1988, this is something I'm really proud of, and we had a heck of a celebration a couple years ago when we passed a milestone of $2 billion, but we've paid out over $2.3 billion in ESOP benefits since 1988. And you mentioned life-changing, community-changing, it's all that. It's generational. These communities are so much better off for these folks having passed through the Houchins ESOP. Today we have 14 different subsidiaries in 5 different industries. We're in retail distribution, manufacturing, insurance, and construction. And some of our holdings are truly extraordinary. We've got we own the largest heavy civil and asphalt paving company in the state of Kentucky. We own a juice company that's headquartered in Chicago that distributes in all 50 states and 25 countries. It's Tampico. We own the 43rd largest independent insurance agency in the country. And that's something we were talking this morning at breakfast. Anybody that's in the insurance business understands the benefit of free cash flow, because it's all converted. I mean, I joked, what are they going to spend it on, computers? So we get all the cash from the insurance company, which is terrific. We own 50% of the largest domestic fence distributor in the United States, headquartered in Russell Springs, Kentucky. We also, our legacy company is grocery, and we have a large and diversified food group. We operate conventional grocery stores, discount grocery stores, convenience stores, quick service restaurants, and we're a large Ace Hardware operator. So very, very diversified food group within the diversified holdings of Houchins Industries. And if it sounds like bragging, it might be, but we've also been really fortunate. We had an event, we've had 2 events really that have impacted the company greatly, and one of them happened in the early 2000s. We purchased Commonwealth Brands, a cigarette manufacturer, held it for about 5 years, and a company wanted it a whole lot worse than we did. And it was valued for the ESOP at, say, 8 turns, and we sold it for 12. We paid $1 billion for the company, sold it for almost $2 billion. Fortunately, we invested the money really well after that, but that event was really a blessing and a curse. It created so much wealth so quickly because of the extra turns that we got versus the valuation. Then we didn't have the ESOP written with a retirement age. So we lost a lot of talent at 45, 50 years old, people going home with $2 and $3 million. And, back then that was a ton of money. So that's one event that really, really changed our company. The second event, believe it or not, was COVID. Most people think what you want of it, but it benefited Houchins Industries. I took over April 1st, 2020. So think about that. I knew COVID was serious when they canceled the SEC tournament. That's when I knew it was real. So, but 3 of our largest holdings benefited tremendously from COVID, and steel prices went up, food prices went up, and just inflation in general. And as a result of that growth and it being some of our largest holdings, we've been able to parlay that windfall into 4 acquisitions since 2020. And 4 material ones. And one of them we did as an ESOP merger, which was awesome. It's a great experience. It's very, very expensive to do, but with the right scale, it makes sense. And since we're really managing a retirement plan, we talk about that a lot at the headquarters there, that we're managing a retirement plan. So the diversification of our holdings tends to level out the stock price. We're built cyclical, counter-cyclical. We're built with special attention given to our silos. We try not to get too heavy in any one industry and try to set a threshold of 25% in any one of those industries I mentioned earlier. Obviously, our legacy company is our biggest, but we have, through acquisitions, gotten the retail percentage there down to around 25%, which is something we were trying to do.
Thank you so much. I'm going to come back to Leslie. Dion brought such a great point up, which is being employee-owned on its own doesn't guarantee long-time growth and continued success. You still need leadership, strategy, talent, governance, capital, et cetera. Leslie, I think your story is particularly interesting because you're a transplant into the ESOP world. And I would love to hear your experience and how you think about that alongside the sustainability of Lewis.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel like a rescue pet. Like I found my forever home, and it's a much safer place because you just think about what we were talking about earlier, the markets today, right? I've been the CEO of a publicly traded company. I can't imagine, how different my day would be, and being, oh man, yeah, it was bad before, but today is especially ugly. But just thinking about the bandwidth that you get back, right? Just the level of reporting, the information. You're talking more to your shareholders than your employees half the time, right? If you've got to do, all your reporting, all your disclosure, all that, it just eats up so much bandwidth and time of the leadership team. Whereas we're fortunate enough to get to think about two things: our employees, who are our shareholders effectively, and our customers. And it just frees up creativity. You get to think long term. Even if you're in a private equity situation, there's some, end of the road, some plan, right? For us, it's to run this ESOP for generations and create generational wealth right down the road. So it just allows you to make those long-term decisions and not react in a way that will appease, whatever situation you're in now, meet your short-term goals, but sacrifice the long-term. And I've just found it to be so much fun, and it's pretty rewarding, to work for an anonymous shareholder or as represented by some fund who's usually sometimes can be more or less challenging, depending. Instead, to know the people and see the difference. And here, I came to this country. You taught me a craft. My kid's going to college. That it gives me chills every time I say it, and we have that story over and over and over again, and that is exciting for me and my team to get out of bed and get out there and help make those people wealthy.
Can you juxtapose that, Leslie, if I could get a few more minutes of your wisdom, with what the industry is like in trying to attract and retain workforce with the two buckets?
Well, that's, as we were talking on the ride over, our industry is plagued with high turnover. It's a really tough job. And again, people living paycheck to paycheck, right? If someone offers $2 more, they're going to run. And contracts have a tendency to, we are treated as a commodity by our customers frequently, even though we'll say, hey, there's value in there. But, sometimes the purchasing agent takes over and it's just the lowest price bidder wins, and that's that. So for our workers, there are two elements. One, if we can get them hooked on the ESOP, once they understand, it's usually when you start having those obligations called children, and you have to worry about your future, and you need things like insurance. We offer insurance, we have vacation, we offer real company benefits. Many of our competitors will just offer pay, right? And then you add on the ESOP and the 401k match, things that are unheard of in the industry. When you get, and it's really workers educating other workers, and especially the older folks, saying, hey, buddy, to their younger colleagues, look at this, look at the whole package. We get them hooked, right? And they want to stay with Lewis. The other thing is for our customers to understand the value. And as we're continuing to educate them, those dollars go back into the community. We are minority owned, and we're affecting those communities that you're trying to uplift in your own service territory, because we work for public utilities. And when that story is now starting to take hold, it gives us more stickiness. We still have to be competitive and deliver a good product, but when they realize the impact that our business is having on their communities, that starts to be a game changer, and you'll hear more about that tomorrow.
Thank you. You have, Dion, you have a very diversified portfolio of businesses, but I would love, you have such also rich history with Houghton's ESOP, and I would love you to comment on the impact on quit rate, turnover, talent attraction, retention, et cetera, in these diverse businesses.
Okay, thank you. Our turnover is pretty typical in most of the industries until we get them in the ESOP for 5 years. we can get them for 5 years, we've got a real chance to keep them long term. The balance at that point is meaningful. Our legacy company obviously has the greatest turnover because of all the entry level people that come in, but you couldn't afford, if you're in the retail business, you can't afford for everybody to vest. You've got too many employees. So everybody talks about, oh, we want zero turnover. If you're an ESOP, you don't want zero turnover. You can't afford zero turnover. So many of our companies do have a low level of turnover, and the insurance group would be a good example, and our two construction companies. And that's primarily because they've been in the ESOP longer, over 20 years. They've been in the ESOP, and I think you've got the employees talking to the new employees about, hey, you need to see what this benefit's worth. You need to understand what this benefit's truly worth to you. Even though there's little turnover there, I'm going to shift this a little bit. I'm going to talk about a little operational business here. Coming along with that little turnover in the insurance group and in our construction group, it makes their dividends to the holding company that much more important. They've got an ESOP obligation that's larger in a proportionate way than the other companies, so it's important that they at least cover their ESOP through dividends, and that's one way that we make sure we've got that ESOP obligation, those checks that we write every spring, covered. We don't make a habit of selling companies, but if we were to, it'd be because that gap has gotten negative or something like that. It's so.
You segued nicely into ownership culture there, and I'd like you to share your wow story or culture communication at Houchins. That word has a lot of meaning.
The wow story. You want the stories, not my retirement stories, but
Yeah.
You want a couple of the retirement stories? All right. I love those. Now, the folks that went through the Commonwealth Brands transaction, obviously they're not our typical retiree, but these are the couple of the wow stories. We had an employee that retired. He'd been there 44 years, started right when the ESOP was started in '88, and retired with mid seven figures. And his dream and his wife's dream, this was at age 60, they had a farm that they had owned for some time, been paying on, but they wanted to build a house there. And to be able to build a house that they could host their grandkids and their kids and have the pool and have everything right there where they could keep them there, and they were able to do that. They can afford that because of that retirement. The other was our receptionist, and she was a character, and she talked about her balance way too much. But anyway, she went home. She had low to mid seven figures, and her goal was she had 3 daughters, and her goal for them was to travel. And sure enough, I mean, she had trips lined up the day that she got her checks, and they've traveled all over the world. They've traveled all over the United States. So that's a terrific story, one that makes me smile. And she still comes in. She still comes in and visits. We've got our Blue Envelope Day, is what we call it, our statement day, this Friday, and can't wait to get back to that. That's something that we celebrate throughout the company. Each individual subsidiary is tasked with putting on a celebration of some sort, and most of them revolve around food, obviously, and then they'll have some kind of an activity. But that's a big day, and everybody gets their statements at the same time. We coordinate this thing like a Broadway musical or something, but I think it's 10 o'clock on Friday. Everybody gets their statements. So
That's super exciting. And what's the number this year of distributions?
Let's see. You talking about the number of statements?
Yeah. No, the bulk dollar amount of the distributions this year.
Oh, now that will be our payouts, not our statements. Our payouts will be almost $120 million in May and June. That's the obligation we have to cover every year before we do any investing, any growing. So we're proud of that number. Very proud to pay it out.
That's a lot of economics going in and across America. Thank you. Leslie, can you talk more about the culture and how that works at Lewis Tree? Because it seems like your workers are dispersed all over the place.
Yeah, it's the very definition of distributed workforce, but I think it affects our culture from top to bottom. The people in corporate realize they are there to serve operations. Lewis doesn't happen in an office in Rochester. That's where we sign some contracts, make sure you get paid. Everybody loves to get paid. Love those payroll people. We do the finances, things like that. But really what the customer buys is the trimmer and the branch manager out there in the field making it happen. And so, making sure that they feel valued. They'll say, at Lewis, I don't feel like a number. I feel like I'm treated well. When they call and they want to problem solve, we respond. If we have employee issues in the field, we dispatch HR, get out there, deal with it, and help them feel heard. It's very, very different than many of our competitors just from the employee experience and what we expect from our leadership. We have a must be present to win. You got to be out in the field, but then we say, hey, that's our truck. So why don't you take care of it? Because that's not, there is no Mr. Lewis. That's our truck. So if you're not taking good care of it and not maintaining it, that's a problem for all of us. And you'll see when that culture really steeps into a group. And then we have our customer promise and taking good care of our customers. So we're invited back tomorrow. And it's a real pride point. And for us, we go, no one wants a storm, but you sure want us to come clean it up when it happens. And it's a real pride point for our team to be there and take care of those communities and be first responders. And it's just part of our ethos. And even our corporate teams will be round the clock to make sure that our field folks are successful. So it's the most teamwork-oriented group I've ever had the pleasure to be with. And it's all centered around the ownership.
This morning I was talking to Leslie about the difference of working for a big public company and an ESOP company, and she shared a term that I'd never used, and I absolutely love it, and it's called organ rejection. And I thought it was so great.
Mary asked a question about, do you have what people I would call climbers, right? Do you have a problem with folks coming in and wanting to climb over other people and being a little aggressive about their own career? I said, no, because at Lewis, it would be organ rejection. That would people would not tolerate that. They don't like it. I've seen, we made one or two hires that were questionable, and often they sort themselves out before we have to deal with it because they don't like it. They don't want to be there. If it's all about you, you're not. And we've even had interview candidates not come to the next round because our office wasn't fancy enough or they didn't feel corporate enough. I'm like, well, yeah, that I won't want an office where our frontline workers would feel uncomfortable, our general foreman, our frontline supervisors would feel uncomfortable coming to training, right? It's a waste of money. We don't need something fancy. So it's been, if it's all about you, we'll spit you out like that.
Whew. All right. Business continuity. Again, as I mentioned earlier, being employee-owned is not your operating strategy, leadership strategy, governance strategy, and it has the same challenges. So I was going to ask each of you to talk about growth, because you have to grow to be able to continue to drive shareholder value. Maybe Deanne, start with you.
You can't survive without growth. I mean, I think that's as important a topic as we're going to talk about today as far as sustainability goes. If you're not growing through acquisitions or organically, growth's growth, then you're shrinking because your repurchase obligation is growing. I promise you, it's growing. Our company went through a period of terrific growth through the Commonwealth Brands transaction, and then we stagnated for 8 to 10 years there. And I was telling them this morning that the value of our company declined. The actual equity fair market value of our company declined. It's because we weren't growing. We were eating ourselves. We were paying out repurchase obligation following that Commonwealth Brands transaction. Proud to say that's not the case today, but it can happen. And it's no fault. I'm not blaming anyone at the time because the cash was going, as I mentioned a while ago, your first obligations, that repurchase obligation, that's where the cash was going. So it's hard to manage. There are many ways to grow your ESOP, and we've done them all. I think we've probably checked all the boxes. Love an ESOP merger. That'd be my first choice because of the limited amount of cash outflow. Now, it requires a lot of expertise, and it can be intimidating. Our staff we have 6 people at the holding company, and 4 are CPAs. I have an accounting degree and a banking background. So we still get help with transactions. And we know what we're doing. We still get help. They're that complex, but they're also worth it because of the cash that you keep on the balance sheet. You can also buy less than 100% of a company. That'd be an investment. They would not be involved in the ESOP. The participants the employees would not be participants in the ESOP. The challenge there is getting the right partner. Well, we're blessed with one of our larger investments. We have the perfect partner. However, I've thought about that and how fortunate we are. If we had the wrong partner, it'd be a nightmare. It absolutely would be a nightmare. So that's one to tread lightly, but it's a terrific way to grow your company because there's no ESOP purchase obligation tied to those dividends that they pay. So then the other way is you can leverage an investment banker, and
We're not all bad.
we know them. Well, we know them all. I think we know them all. We get contacts from them every day. The challenge there, I think, is you can go shopping and you can get exactly what you want. You're going to pay what it's worth. You're going to pay top dollar. There's no bargains. There's no discounts. That's your job to get top dollar for your client, and I appreciate that. But that's the challenge there, is that you're absolutely going to pay top dollar. But me and my president, we joke all the time that we don't get to buy at the bottom. Nothing's ever for sale at the bottom. So then lastly, and this tends to work best, is you can buy directly from the owner. If you're fortunate enough to have a referral or know somebody to get your foot in the door with just an owner, more than likely that person, if they're not going through an investment banker, then they're probably anti-private equity. It's been my experience. They don't want a private equity person to own their company or company to own their company. And so they're thinking about their employees, and that is absolutely a home run for an ESOP to have that opportunity to buy a company that is looking out for their employees, because that's what we're going to do. So,
Yeah, I see a lot of business owners dating. So being out there like you are today, telling your story, having your business unit leaders telling their story, and who wouldn't want to be part of that? Leslie?
Yeah, for us, it's the same thing. How do we use the capital that we build up? Well, it's best to create more employee ownership, to buy more companies, to expand, to diversify. One day we want to be Houchins. Now we have 2 companies, and we'll continue to add more. But as we started last year, we did our first big acquisition for us, not huge, nothing like you, but a fencing company. And it's great because it creates a hedge. It creates, more opportunity. It increases our value. But also, in looking for that, we realized the owner that with tears in their eyes talks about their employees, who's built this business with their blood, sweat, and tears. That's our owner. And we found a great match. This husband and wife team he's been building fence since he was 18. And the business was really successful. It was too much to manage. And to have our back office support that we can offer, it's like, well, I'd love to bid in this state, but setting up the licenses is a pain. Like, we got that. That's nothing. IT is a real pain in the butt. We got that. QuickBooks is probably not big enough for a multi-billion-dollar company. Agree with you. We got that. And so being able to take all of the headache of running a business and let this guy get back to what he loves, which is working with customers, working with employees. And this is a tough cowboy out in Colorado who choked up so bad his wife had to take over on the day we announced the ESOP to his employees, right? And there are people who've built these businesses who would love to put it in those kind of hands. He's still very instrumental, running it today, but his dreams are being lived out. He said, I knew it could be bigger, but I couldn't do it myself. And then to see his team get to benefit, and they're going to get their first statements from us in May, is just so powerful. And we're excited to do that again and again and let the businesses support and help each other. And then being part of the ESOP community. We're now buying some fence parts from one of Dion's businesses after we met. We hope we're getting the family price. But I will say the growth obligation.
we only own half of that company, by the way.
But
we'll do our part.
It was better than their competitor. But the real growth part and the whole thing about leading an ESOP is it's the responsibility to do it right for me and for I'm sure all leaders is so serious, because that's someone's retirement money and them. And so we've got to get it right, and it's all hands on deck. And it is a different obligation that's both exciting but got a lot of gravity.
I want to echo what you said about you're
family
you're
discount?
tough guy. You're tough. No, you're tough. You're a tough guy owner in Colorado. I reviewed a video. I told you this Friday's our statement date. I reviewed a video last night from one of the owners of a company we purchased 2 years ago, and they're just now getting their first ESOP statement. and he was so proud. I mean, he was front and center through the whole video, talking about employee ownership, how fortunate they were to find us, which I appreciated. But it was really really touched my heart. So
We're so blessed with those employee ownership stories and to be part of it. I think we have time for a couple questions, Maureen. If the people would like to ask Deanne or Leslie anything. Are we live stream yet? Okay. Here we got a question right here.
1 second. I want to ask you a very serious question, Leslie. You said you're a minority-owned company. What kind of minority? Accent minority? I was just curious.
So we
This is
are,
just a funny statement.
yeah, so we are, our ownership demographics are, majority, right? So we are 52% Hispanic, another 7% Black African American. And that's not even including the women, the veterans, the other categories. But that's when you go and look at the shares, and that's actual holdings. So who owns our shares? No one person owns more than 1% of our shares. And when you add that up, that is how the ownership stacks up, which is pretty exciting. Those are all the families that we're impacting, and most of that is craft workers. So it's great that when the company succeeds, those people today out in the cold or sweating or wherever they are, out in the elements working, will benefit from that.
And you said you're in Colorado.
We fence companies in Colorado. We're in actually 27 states. So there's somebody in some kind of weather somewhere all the
Is
time.
there another question? All right. So do you have one? You're good? Okay. Thank you. Ownership advantage. Thanks to Aspen Institute and Rutgers for putting this day together for everyone, and to the live audience and to our virtual attendees. Leslie and Deanne, exceptional leadership and so kindly telling the story of the power of employee ownership. Wish the best to both of you and your very blessed employee owners. Thank you, Mark.
thank you.
Thank you.